Welcome to Red, White, and Blue. We're in Austin for a special edition interviewing our legislators. Let's see what they have to say. We're here with Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, Red, White, and Blue in Austin. Governor, welcome to Red, White, and Blue.
Good to be back. We were talking about the first appearance on the show was in your inaugural year, which was my first year running for office 16, 17 years ago.
We're a little older.
Yes, we are.
Hopefully,
but we're looking good.
I think pretty good for
yeah,
our
we're
age.
holding up. We're holding
so
up.
let's talk about we're mid-session.
Yeah.
There's been a lot going on. Give your constituents a report. Where are things at?
I think we are possibly going to end up. A lot of work to do. You know that Smokey and the Bandit song. Remember, a long way to go, but a short time to get there.
Yes.
You know, time is quickly running out. This could be the most impactful session for the people of Texas in modern history. Property tax reform and relief, really addressing school finance and instruction in a way that will put us #1 in the country for how we fund and incentivize outcomes, teacher pay raises that they haven't had in decades from the state, eminent domain, protecting private property, but still letting our economy grow with all the pipelines that we need for all that oil that's in Texas so we can get it out and export it. Looking at, we passed the balanced billing on a lot of people, go to the hospital and all of a sudden they get this surprise bill. It passed 28-3 bipartisan support, saving people hundreds and thousands of dollars potentially when they have to go to the hospital, and bill after bill after bill after bill. And so I'm very excited. A lot of pro-life bills. Election security bills. I mean, we're really doing a lot of great work this session.
Yeah, it sounds like there's been a significant...
And we still have a ways to go to get it all done.
We do, yeah. And the old saying is in the Texas legislature, it's a lot easier to kill things than it is to pass things.
And that's what makes us this extraordinary. And Gary, I will tell you, having a new speaker, Dennis Bonnen, no disrespect to the former speaker, but we're working really well together in the things that are behind the scenes of just chairmen from each house working together, of committees working together, making sure we're not doubling up our work. We're moving at a quicker pace and we always work at a quick pace. The House is working at a very fast pace. So we're making our time very efficient. And so I feel really good about where we're going. But look, when you take on school finance, the school finance recommendation, school finance commission, property tax relief, these are multi-billion-dollar issues, very complex, very complicated. And if they were easy, someone would have tackled them in the last 20 or 30 years, and they haven't. So we're trying to get a lot done.
And I think part of that goes to the credit of the foresight of creating the interim study committees to
Yes.
deal with, to flush out these issues
Yes.
and get prepared for the legislative session.
The
So,
School Finance Commission did great work, great work.
yes, we want to make sure our schools are adequately funded. We want to make sure that our homeowners are not taxed out of their homes.
Right. And on that funding to schools, we want to make sure that where we spend it, which we have not always done in the past, is where it's needed and where it's going to be really beneficial. So for example, we're going to incentivize schools to receive more money if we can improve the outcomes of third grade reading, which is crucial. Right now, in some schools, less than 30% are third grade reading level. So we've got to target those kids. If you can't read, you can't learn because you have to learn to read to learn. And so very important. That's just one little thing. Dual language we're going to focus on, which will be helping get away from some of the out-of-date, antiquated ways of teaching students the English language over a long period of time. Gary, today, almost 1 out of 5 students in public schools is not proficient in English. That's almost 1 million.
That's a lot of people.
Out of 5.4 million. So all these things are so important.
Interesting about language, you know that the state of Israel, they don't do bilingual education. They do Hebrew immersion.
Right.
Totally different alphabet from people who come from alphabet countries like ours, and people learn it because you have to.
Well, we do that for everything but Spanish, if you think about it. If you come here from any other country in the world,
Got to learn it.
You got to jump in the deep end of the pool quickly.
And it does help if they do learn English in terms of being successful in America.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, it's border security is always a topic for Texas. We have a long border with Mexico. What's going on in the session on border security?
Well, when I ran for lieutenant governor back in 2014, I committed to spending $800 million in our budget, which is the first time it had happened, for our own Texas border security, basically being spent through the Department of Public Safety, our state troopers. We did that in 15, we did that in 17, we're doing it in 19 again. We're a long way from the border being secure, mainly because the Democrats in Washington are blocking every attempt to do it. Now, if you go back over the last 20 years, I can blame both parties when they were in power for not addressing this. I've worked with President Trump a lot. I continue to work with him on this issue. We have 1,200 miles of border with Mexico. We don't need a wall, a 1,200-mile wall, but we need to fence, wall, whatever you want to call it, a barrier that's effective from Falcon Lake all the way to Brownsville. This month, it's estimated 100,000 people will come into this country, many seeking asylum. From San Diego to Brownsville, about 60% of those come through Texas, and most of those come between Falcon Lake and Brownsville. We have a bigger than normal group coming in El Paso, but McAllen, all that area, tremendous numbers of people coming. And so President Trump will do it like that if he'll get help from the Democrats. And if he doesn't, the Texas Senate passed a resolution 2 weeks ago. It was on a partisan basis. Republicans voted for it, saying that we support the president, support the barrier, we support the emergency. It's a crisis. Gary, we cannot educate, medicate, and incarcerate the whole world. And quite frankly, we're being overrun right now, overrun.
What are the fiscal implications to the state of Texas with this massive illegal immigration?
I'm not saying that every child in school that doesn't speak English is here illegally, because I've learned, working with my Democrat senators, there are a lot of children born in Hispanic families in this country that come to school that don't speak English because they live in an environment where English is not spoken. But you could assume that there's a fair amount of our students. We can't ask a young person, you know, if they're here illegally or not. So we don't know exactly how many in our schools, but you can assume that's a big number if we have 1 million that aren't proficient in English. Well, that's a huge price tag to us. Plus the classes, the bilingual classes, which now will move to dual language if all these bills pass over time, that's a cost to us. Our healthcare system, you know, if I were to put a number on it, it's in the multi-billion dollars of Texas, plus what we do in law enforcement, plus what we lose in the bad actors who come here who commit crime in our legal system and the incarceration. It's billions and billions of dollars to Texas and the 800 million we spend on border security. If Washington would do their job and support the president, that's another 800 million we could cut taxes or put to something that is needed. So it's billions and billions of dollars to Texas.
Wow. An area that has gotten publicity in recent weeks, Texas State University banned a conservative Christian student group called Turning Point.
Yes.
What happened to freedom of speech on our college campuses?
Well, we have 30 priority bills in the session. These are bills that senators bring to me, that people bring to me, that are important to me, and we'll pass probably over 1,200 bills. But we have our 30 priorities. Now, they're very important bills beyond that 30, but 30. And one of those bills was campus free speech that Senator Joan Huffman has already passed out of here, and it passed. I may be corrected when I look at the number. I think it passed without really any objection. There may have been some no votes on it, but we recognize whether you're a liberal, a moderate, or a conservative, we cannot inhibit free speech on our college campuses. As we're doing this interview today, I saw a story early this morning that some college out in the Midwest doesn't want Vice President Pence to come. This has gotten just crazy, and you have a right. Conservative groups have a right to be on these campuses. And so we passed that bill out, and I feel sure it'll get to the governor's desk.
If we get rid of freedom of speech, Governor, then it's pretty much all over.
It is all over.
Well, I want to thank you for taking time out from your extremely busy schedule.
Well, thank you for coming up to Austin.
And it gave you a chance to talk to your constituents. And we'll have you back on the show when you're out of session, when you have a little more free time.
Well, thank you. This is going to be, if we can all get this done, and a lot of work again, if we can get this done, this may go down as the best session in modern Texas history, and maybe in Texas history, because we're lifting a lot of big issues up.
If you're dealing and solving with the Robin Hood problem, that in and of itself is an unbelievable accomplishment that many have tried and they all failed. So I wish you good luck and Godspeed on those issues.
Yeah, remember, the number one issue is property tax relief, because everyone, Democrat, Republican, Independents, we must have property tax relief. So that's at the top. Robin Hood, school financing, and giving teachers and across the board big raises important. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. We're here with Senator Larry Taylor of Galveston County. How are you, Senator?
I'm doing well.
Good to see you. Thanks for taking the time to visit with us. We're here to talk about a number of issues pretty quick. First, you had Harvey, major impact on your district. Kind of give us a brief report of where things are at with the state and Harvey.
Well, in our supplemental appropriations, we've put about $1 billion into education to make up for the losses from Harvey. We've got about $800 million in planning for mitigation, those types of things, another $1 billion in relief that we've been working on. So take care of the Harvey situation. I think we're, from the state level, in pretty good shape.
Do you think the plans are going to go forward to help us prevent another Harvey?
Well, one of the big projects I've been working on for a long time is that coastal barrier.
Right.
Not really so much for Harvey type storm, which is a rain event, but for the typical hurricane that we get, which is a storm surge. And we have a huge petrochemical complex there in the Houston area that's frankly wide open and unprotected beyond what the individual industries have for their own properties.
Yeah.
But that ship channel in Galveston Bay is unprotected.
So are you making progress in
Yes.
getting that program funded?
Yes, in fact, we got the money we needed for this session. The feds did give us about $4 billion in funding to do the bookends, which is Freeport and on the eastern side for Beaumont in that area. And so we've got the funding we need to do for this session to make sure that money is taken care of, because if we didn't take care of that, we'd have lost the whole project. So.
And a major ecological and economic disaster for the region.
Not just for our region. That region produces so much fuel, military aviation fuel, commercial aviation fuel. It would be a huge impact on the country. We had it closed for about 3 or 4 days during Harvey, and gas prices went about 80 cents on the East Coast.
Amazing.
So it's kind of a reminder for the country, this is an important region.
So hopefully the project will get done before that major hurricane that hits that will do that, because it'll come at some point.
Unfortunately, it's taken a long time to get this project done because it is a big project. But we hope to have that done before the superstorm hits our area, which, Hurricane Ike was a very close call.
It was.
The eye of the storm actually went right up the ship channel, and you saw what happened to Bolivar. If that storm had been about 20 miles further south and west, that storm surge would have gone straight up the Houston ship channel, 45 feet deep in a very shallow Galveston Bay. And you know what water does when it hits shallow water? It jacks up. And so that 50 inches of rain we got in the Houston area, you give it an 8-foot storm surge, that makes up for a lot of rain in a hurry.
It sure does. You're chairing the Education Committee?
Yes, sir.
So what are the major projects there this session?
We're doing a little thing called school finance. It's
a
done
big
about
deal.
every 50 years. But we're really trying to transform our public education system. We had a school finance commission that met for a year during the interim from January to December, right before we came in session in January. But that commission did some great work. It was a very diverse group from all over the state. We had educators, business people, teachers, superintendents, CFOs for schools, business, and all came very diverse. And we came up with like 35 recommendations that were unanimously approved by that commission. And that's really given us a great foundation for this legislative session and a lot of momentum going into session to really get something done for schools.
So you think then the prospects of passing the reforms of I think you're on that commission, are you not?
I am.
Is it going to get passed?
I'm very confident. We've got a lot of momentum. We've got a lot of horsepower. The top three, the governor, lieutenant governor, speaker, are all on board with this. I think we get it done.
And the House, what are the prospects there?
They've already passed their bill out. We'll hear our bill next week, and we'll go to conference and get that worked out.
So you think the two bills will be pretty close?
Mm-hmm.
And how long do you think this will buy us some time in terms of school finance, so we won't be dealing with it for a number of years?
Well, there's a number of issues in our current situation that we learned in the School Finance Commission, particularly recapture. As local property values increase, the state share drops. Well, and recapture grows as well as a part of that. Well, our recapture right now has been about $1 billion. Now it's up to $2 billion. In about 3 or 4 years, it's $5 billion. And a few years after that, the recapture can actually surpass the state's portion of state funding.
Wow.
For schools.
So how are you changing recapture?
Well, by reducing the increase. The 2.5% cap on schools is not actually a detriment to the schools because it ends up with the same money. The state's making up the difference. But it slows that down, and recapture drops a lot because we're adding to the basic allotment. This really kind of gets off in the weeds a little bit.
Yeah, a little confusing.
The basic allotment goes to every school. We're increasing that. So we're reducing recapture. We're also reducing the increases in local property taxes, and we're cutting the current rate in the bills as we're working on right now. So property payers, taxpayers will see a real benefit. today and in the future.
And it sounds like the school districts will benefit also.
Oh, absolutely. We're injecting a lot of new money into public education.
Well, thank you so much for visiting with us today, Senator Taylor. You're doing great work.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Gary. Appreciate it.
We're here with State Representative Dan Huberty from the Houston area. He's chairman of the Public Education Committee in the House, where a lot of action has been during this legislative session.
Yeah.
So kind of give us a report. Where are things at with your priority bills?
Yeah, so we passed House Bill 3 out a couple weeks ago, sent it over to the Senate. That was the big push this year. You know, I spent a year before getting ready for this on the School Finance Commission. 15 members of the commission, chaired by Scott Brister, and nonpartisan groupings from appointments from the lieutenant governor, the speaker, and we came out of it. You know, originally we didn't know where it was going to land. Came out of it with unanimous support. The exciting thing about it is that there was a lot of outcomes. You know, we learned a lot of things like, you know, the majority of our third graders can't read at grade level. That's important. You know, we're supposed to be teaching them to read. And we always say this is that, you know, between kindergarten and third grade, we teach them how to read. After third grade, they have to read to be able to learn. And so we're going to start funding their priorities to be able to early reading allotments, things of that nature. And realize that we've got to get the best possible teachers in the toughest places to teach. And so we're changing the entire system. You know, it hasn't been changed really since 1984 when they passed the original House Bill 72. And when you think about that, how long ago that is, I mean, the whole state's changed.
Oh, it's not the same place.
No, it's not. And so we have to do things differently, and that's really what we tried to accomplish. So passed out of the House 148-1. Sent it over to the Senate. I've been working very closely with Chairman Taylor, who chairs Senate Education. He plans on having a substitute of some sort up next week. Some different ideas and concepts, because Chairman Taylor and I both served on the School Finance Commission. A lot of the ideas and concepts that we thought about relative to the School Finance Commission, I believe, will be in his bill as well. And then hopefully he'll get it out of the Senate, and we'll go to conference and try to reconcile it.
Do you think that if the solution that you've passed through the House ends up pretty much what the Senate ends up with, or the conference committee does, they will have a solution to the Robin Hood crisis that'll last more than a year or two?
Yes. Incidentally, this morning I just laid out another piece of the puzzle, which has been, you know, interesting in the dialogue we've had in the last week, which is House Joint Resolution 3, which is a constitutional amendment for a tax swap. So a swap of sales tax for maintenance and operation reduction. It equates, when you add the two pieces of the puzzle together, to about almost an 18% reduction on maintenance and operation taxes. So it's
Which
real
would
relief.
result in property tax savings?
Absolutely, it's real property tax relief. It's not just the reforms that we're talking about in Senate Bill 2 and House Bill 2, but it's real reforms. And yes, so under House Bill 3 today, recapture is reduced to $3 billion. With the House Joint Resolution, it actually reduces $5 billion. It's significant. I mean, when you think about the savings, you know, we're at about 38% of a reduction from what we would be under House Bill 3. You'd see about a 70% reduction in recapture payments.
Which is significant for a lot of
Sure.
school districts in the area you represent, in the region.
Absolutely.
It would save them money in terms of money that would leave the district
Yeah.
and not come back.
Well, I'll give you a great example. So in Houston, their tax rate, you know, goes down. I believe the current tax rate is hovering just about $1.04, and their taxes will go down to 85 cents. The recapture payment goes from over $330 million to zero. There's no recapture. If we pass this, there's no recapture in the city of Houston.
All right, so there's one of the issues on the sales tax between you and your Republican friends in the Senate is that some of them want 100%
Right.
of the dollars going to offset property taxes. Right. Your proposal's a little different.
It's 80-20. So 80% is going to maintenance and operation, which is what we discussed, and then 20% is going to what we call the basic allotment. So when you think about that, it's how much does the state pay per student? But I would argue that it all goes to property tax relief, because when you increase the basic allotment, you actually reduce recapture. You allow the schools that are in recapture to keep more of their own money by doing that, by increasing the level of wealth that's associated with that. And in addition, because you're increasing that basic allotment, you're not having school districts going out for TREs. They don't need.
What's a TRE?
It's a tax rollback election.
Okay.
It's where they're able to go to the voters and say, you know, the current, you know, maximum tax rate is, you know, the tier 1 rate is $1. There's another 17 cents that they could go to their voters for. Actually, there's 4 pennies that the board can vote
So
on.
you moves them further away from that
Further
borderline.
away, that's right. It moves them further away from having to go back to the voters to say, geez, I need more money for this particular reason. So we'll reconcile that with the Senate. I've had great conversations with Senator Taylor and certainly Senator Betancourt about this as we go forward. I understand where he's at in this position. We just have to go through the discussions of making sure that we're all on the same page in that. But I can tell you, I've had these conversations with the governor. I've had it with the speaker. I've had it with Lieutenant Governor. Certainly, we've all kind of very close on the same page. And I'm kind of you think about being a Ronald Reagan Republican. If you can get 85 or 80% of the people to agree with you, you're doing pretty good.
Heck, if you can get 80% of what you try to get done, that's getting done a lot. Thank you so much, Representative Huberty, for the insight on what's going on. Sounds like you're having a good session.
Yeah, so far, we got a long way to go though. Wait for it, right? That's what I tell people.
We're here with Senator Carol Alvarado. We're in her Austin office. Recently elected, longtime state representative, now in the Senate. Look, my first question, Senator, is now that you're a senator, tell us the difference between being a senator and a House member.
Well, the difference is you're in a larger body in the House, so being one of 31, the relationships are even more important, especially reaching across the aisle. That's important because we're in the minority over here. But you're able to get your bills passed a little quicker because there's fewer of you. The workload is about 5 times as much. You're on at least 4 committees. I'm on 5.
Wow. And
you are constantly in committees or on the floor. It requires a lot more reading, preparation, and when your bill is on the intent calendar, you never know what day it's going to come up. So you might have a bill on the calendar, on the intent calendar for a couple of days, and then it comes up. Whereas in the House, there's a calendar for the day, so you're really prepared. You know which day your bill is going to come up. Here, you just sort of have to stay prepared. But I've been pleased with the way things are going. I'm on great committees, and I've been able to pass. I think we've had about 5 or 6 bills pass already. So that's I think, a pretty good pace to be at.
Good. Obviously the Houston area suffered from Harvey,
Right.
Tremendous impact. What are you doing here in terms of your priorities of working on to make sure we don't have the kind of disaster we had last time?
Well, we've got several bills that we are, some have passed, one passed, well, we have one coming up very soon. But housing is important, rebuilding, and when there's a development that involves the 9% tax credit, you cannot have 2 projects within a 2-mile radius. And we're getting a bill to exempt areas that have been declared as disaster areas, so that some of that money can be spent within the 2-mile radius, because otherwise that money has to be spent by 2024. And if you can't build more than one project within the 2-mile radius, and this is affordable housing, by the way,
right,
then you might not get to that money by the time it expires in 2024.
Which has been a problem
Right.
For the city of Houston in
Right.
terms of affordable housing and spending the money. I know we had to give some back.
Right. That bill is on the local calendar, so that may be up tomorrow. But also we have one creating a business advisory council for to get input from the business community about how to respond to disasters. Many times we've seen the private sector really step up and offer their services. But what we want to do is to have a 12-member board or council that gives input to the state on preparing for disasters, on responding to disasters, making sure that critical businesses to our economy can get up and running, and that they have the things that they need in place to be ready to go and open for business post hurricane or other disasters.
So you'd call that your plan ahead bill, so we get
Yes.
ready. Okay, the Senate recently passed the well, you didn't pass school finance.
No,
you
not
passed,
yet. That's
you
next
passed
week,
the
hopefully.
property tax
Right.
Cap option to vote. I guess it's probably a trigger for an election. You didn't vote for it.
Right.
Why didn't you vote for it?
Well, as you know, I started out my public service career in local government as a council member, and I've seen what the cap has done to Houston. It's tied their hands. I'm a firm believer in local control, and I think if cities and counties are going crazy with their budgets, then it's up to the voters to hold them accountable and vote them out of office. But we haven't seen that happen. And I think people are pretty much satisfied with the way their local officials are spending their money. And I really think that's a local issue. It's 3.5% cap, and then rolls over to, they'd have to have an election. The House will take that up this week. So we'll see what happens. It could come back at 4%, it could come back less. We're not sure, so it's still a work in progress. But I think it ties the hands. In my cities, in my district, Pasadena, Galena Park, Jacinto City, Baytown, they would have preferred a 6%, and they probably could have lived with a 5%, but anything below that was going to be harmful. They're going to have to cut some critical services.
Well, it was wonderful visiting you, Senator Alvarado. You're a friend of the show. We love to have you back when you're back in Houston, post-session, to kind of get your take
Sure.
on how your freshman year in the state Senate was.
It's great to have you in Austin.